one of the important concepts is situated knowledges. That epistemologically, I do believe that people's own conditions, social locations where they grew up, what kinds of identities they hold, multiple identities people hold, and what kinds of experiences they had, make them know a lot of things about the conditions that they're in. So then I do pay attention to those kinds of things. I did this work at the end of 2015, and the first 4 or maybe 6 months of 2016. And it's a crucial time period because when I started it, opposition firmly believed that they were winning the war, and they were very close to Damascus into 2015. And then the turn of events and the interventions by the superpowers, particularly Russia, and the counter political move from United States changed the direction of it in the beginning of 2016. And people suddenly lost their hope of winning the war, which is an important point of doing this research, because at the first initial few people that I interviewed were firmly believing that this was going to be won, and their struggle and leaving the home was very meaningful. And towards the end of the first half of the 2016, hopes were lost, and they were starting to be more critical about the war and being part of it. Now, during this process, why I'm actually telling you this is that regardless of their political affiliations or worldview, all Syrians that I talked to referred to the war as the revolution, right? It wasn't just the Islamic groups that were talking about it as revolution. Everyone, seculars as well, were talking about it as revolution. Now, this is, for me, is very important. I had a reviewer who told me that obviously this reviewer reveals their own positionality, right? Several jihadists groups are not revolutionaries. Why are you keep calling them as revolutionaries? This is the feedback I'm getting. Now, first of all, the definition of revolution in the literature is not only about things that would be accepted as either liberal or progressive as you are defining it. Revolution can mean that some way, right? The move that you are making, the mobilization that you are having drastically changes the system. You can also argue it that way. So regardless of who is doing it, revolutions can be done in any kind of direction. But besides that point, what I want to focus on more so is that there is a value of understanding that different groups of people coming from different streams of political ideologies, identities, and worldviews called this revolution. As social researchers, this is our job to be finding it. Our job is not to be having a certain worldview and trying to fit the facts to those ideas where we like them to be, but rather to see the picture through the definitions of people. For me, that is through the definitions and the expressions of people. That's where I am coming to this situated knowledges and using people's lived experiences as my epistemological base. I hope that this example beyond Syria also is giving you an idea about these terms. I'm using them. I like my viewers to also pay attention to how these terms could be understood when we are talking about a real case, right? That I aimed and purposefully to find people coming from different streams of life. That means different ethnic groups, let it be Arabs, Kurds, Turkmens. I couldn't reach the Yazidis or Alevite because of the location, and Turkey had certain groups of people more visibly there. The availability of the research participants depended on how many different communities I could enter, but I was able to for these three ethnic groups. And also I did have conscious effort to have people from different class positionalities, people who are urban refugees who are struggling financially, working class and middle class, and people who have professions and are actively working within a particular job, or people who are educated but unable to find a work, people who are students, people who worked in NGOs were the group of people that I found and included to my study, of course. So this is how I ended up looking into different groups of Syrians in the Gaziantep setting. This is a border city to Aleppo, right? And because of the border location, there was considerable number of Syrians living in Gaziantep. Numbers are very important. They actually eventually ended up building their own neighborhoods, compact neighborhoods that the shops are Arabic speaking, all Syrian. So then they are continuing their Syrian identity as it was in Syria. So then this was an important city in terms of understanding the refugee experience only because of the sheer number of people living in that particular setting as well. So then my questions, right, are what is it like to be in that particular segment of society, not only living as a refugee, but also as a person who comes from a certain ethnic identity, certain linguistic identity, certain political identity, certain class-based identity that we need to be understanding. What are the ways that people define themselves, or what they have seen in front of them that was happening in Syrian war? And how do they experience themselves in those particular identities, in those social locations, as we can call it. So what is the role of the researcher? That's what I was asked as well. If they know everything, right? Are we the recorders of this? And the scientist's job is not just recording. And of course it is not, because I never said, right, individual people, what they know means that they can explain what is happening in the entirety of the society. That's the role of the social researcher. What I mean is that combination of all of these knowings and experiences in a given society, right, when we are actually looking into all of those things, it is our job to collect that information and create an intersubjective meaning, and then interpret what we are seeing in front of us, name it, and find the questions for it, see where the problems, the causes of the problems lie, and then come up with, if we are policy-oriented researchers, policy issues, or if we are theoretical minds, to theorize what it is that we are seeing. That's where the researcher's role comes from. And I'm hoping that this is something that we will collectively think about in terms of the role of the social science, particularly the qualitative researchers and social sciences' roles in the bigger picture. Hence, I want to summarize. How they live the world and how they name the world is very important for our understanding what is happening in different segments of society, so that we can reach a more objective picture about that particular society. So objectivity by no means mean that we are going to be saying, okay, this what they are saying is cannot go out, this is out, and this particular discourse is the correct one. If we are saying that we are not doing science, but what we are doing is an ideological work, which is a different one. You can go and do that kind of work in some other setting. A brief explanation of how many people I reached. This is important. A little brief information without boring you too much. I had 79 interviews, 85 hours and 18 minutes. That's 5,118 minutes of interviews that I did. I didn't do strategic transcribing or professional transcribers for us. I actually did transcribe everything. That's why it took me such a long time to finish this book. But at the same time, it helped me to learn a lot about the data that I was exposed to, right? I first wrote everything verbatim, word by word, without skipping anything. And then I read all of those things and I sorted that data all by myself, which ended up making me going back and forth when I'm seeing a very capturing quote from someone to go back and see their entire life process. Right? A brief interview note for you here. Regardless of what work I do, I did different field works in my academic life so far. I did one in Turkey with women's participation to democracy. I did a field work in North Cyprus looking at the war memories and war histories of Turkish Cypriot women, which was an unexplored territory which needs a lot of work still today. And I did work about Afro-Cypriots and the community interactions, the way they're treated in the society. Interviews with the HARE participants. I also did the interview with the Syrian refugees, male and female. It's my first male and female combined research. So when I'm doing different types of research with different subject matter, regardless of what I do, I start the first question, tell me about yourself. The reason is to what I told you about the contextualization of the people, but I will talk about that hopefully about the interviewing strategies that I use at a later time. But it gives me a holistic view about people to understand where they're coming from, and it turns out to be in this particular research was very crucial because people who are positioned as refugees were talking. They went back and forth with past and today and sometimes future all at the same time. So temporality became important. So then the listening of the people made me understand the importance of the temporal and spatial positionalities in their lives. So then looking into how their life was, where their histories begin, right? Because it's very interesting. When you're asking, tell me about yourself, sometimes people, they are confused at first. That confusion, I actually am consciously aware and let it happen. Sometimes people start from their high school graduation. Sometimes they start from their marriage, interestingly. And sometimes they start from when their children were born. And sometimes they start from their great-grandmother, right? When they're searching for their identities. And interesting, tells you a lot of things. Sometimes they can start nowhere. They tell you ask me what you want to know and I will tell you. That's also a finding. This is where I did ask people how their life was. I first let them tell me what they wanted to tell about their lives. And then if they didn't feel that, in that initial question, I asked them their life before the war. What was it like to be living in Syria as a Syrian before war, or any of these? The decision of leaving home is a very important point in a person's life. If there was an opportunity for decision, of course, and then coming to Turkey, the journey, and then there's life up until that moment in Turkey. When you look at the quote that captures you, you don't just put that as a hanging thing. Oh, it's a very capturing thing, but you do really need to analyze that, what it is said to you, with this way of understanding the person in front of you, to understand their meaning fully without misusing it, mistreating it. And then that was very important for me, and I did put the effort. I hope I gave the people enough access that they deserve and justice to their voices. I actually talk about that I had a horizontal reach to interview participants. I did spend 2.5 years in Gaziantep and had connections before I decided that I have enough people that would play the role of the gatekeeper and give me access. Otherwise, it's very difficult to do research with refugees. They live very precarious lives, and it's very difficult for them to be naturally, to trust and talk to people. So some of them had never talked to a researcher before, so I didn't have any type of fatigue that the research talks about in terms of finding the same people over and over and asking them, all of them, these kinds of questions all the time. And that's what I call the horizontal reach of the people, right? I had different political identities or location, social location, holding people who gave me suggestions and played key roles for voting for me, endorsing me. And through that, I did reach considerable number of people and was able to talk to them. In the next video, we will look at the methodological importance of iCamera and the role of the operator, what is spectrum, and the spectator. To be notified for the upcoming videos, don't forget to turn on the notification bell. If the information contributed to your thought process, please subscribe and like the video. See you soon.